Six Flags Over Georgia is about to get one of the largest investments in the park's history. The park just opened a brand new roller coaster this year for the 2025 season, and all around, the upgrades the park has gotten since the Cedar Fair merger has been spectacular. Over Georgia is just getting started though, and over the next 5 years, I think we'll see them take an extreme approach to bring this park up to the level it can be. Land clearing has already begun on what could be for the park's next coaster, and by 2030, I think we'll see Over Georgia announce at least 2 new roller coasters in addition to many other large investments throughout the park. With Cedar Fair now in charge, Over Georgia is about to undergo an urgent plan to develop it into one of the top parks in the chain. Cedar Fair doesn't disappoint when it comes to building up parks, and the projects they have planned for Over Georgia could even be bigger than what they did for Carowinds when they built it up 15 years ago. Over Georgia is already an amazing park, but with their new rapid investment plan, it may soon become one of the best parks in the country. Six Flags Over Georgia was always in the middle of the Six Flags parks. The park was nothing special and had nothing outstanding. It was just solid all around. They could expect new additions relatively frequently and they would get decent investment, but never anything special. The park was also a Six Flags park, so its aesthetic wasn't the greatest either. Since the Six Flags merger on July 1st of 2024, the Cedar Fair executives have made it a clear priority to bring up the level of all the Six Flags parks to the level of the average Cedar Fair park. This starts with the basics like ride repaints, food upgrades, theming upgrades, and overall park maintenance. In just a few months, those Cedar Fair executives have made it clear that one of their biggest focuses will be on Six Flags Over Georgia and to build that park up to its full potential. The Atlanta market is pretty big, and a proper run park in that area of the country could potentially even be more successful than a park like Carowinds up in North Carolina. After taking over management of the new Six Flags company last year, Cedar Fair executives immediately pushed through a plan to repurchase the remainder of Six Flags Over Georgia from their partners. Over Georgia hadn't been fully owned by the chain, and they immediately signed a deal to repurchase the remainder of the park back for $332 million starting in early 2027. No one spends $330 million buying back a park unless they really plan on making it successful. So when Cedar Fair pushed this deal through and signed it in December of 2024, it was starting to become clear that Over Georgia would be one of their biggest priorities. Immediately after purchasing the rest of the park back, Cedar Fair executives began pushing through their plan to spruce up the park and its aesthetic, bringing it up to the Cedar Fair level. There were changes made to the park's entrance and security to streamline that process. There were new signs added as well as repaints throughout the park. For starters, the park spent some money on upkeep for the dark ride Monster Mansion, including new animatronics. The park also repainted their B&M hypercoaster Goliath to a stunning aqua color, changing their skyline forever and making the coaster look like the awesome ride it really is. Along with that came repaints for part of the station and some signs as well. The park's Batman the Ride clone also got a ton of upgrades, including newly added theming and an incredible new lighting package for the ride station. The craziest thing the park did by far was repaint their brand new roller coaster before it even opened. The park's newest coaster was supposed to open in 2024, being called Georgia Surfer, and was originally going to be blue. After the ride got delayed to 2025, Cedar Fair had a chance to put their touches on it before it would officially open. Cedar Fair executives had the ride renamed to Georgia Gold Rusher and fully repainted to properly fit the ride in with the area and theming around it. I'm honestly still surprised that they were willing to repaint a brand new ride, but that just goes to show the dedication they have to truly build Over Georgia into an elite park. Aside from all the ride upgrades, there's also the food and drink upgrades this park has received for the 2025 season. This includes a full redo of 2 restaurants inside and out to make them nicer and more efficient, as well as upgrades to the actual food the Cedar Fair way by bringing in head chefs as well as adding refill stations throughout the park. Overall, 2025 has already been a great year for Six Flags Over Georgia, and this is what they've managed to do in just a few months. The next few years are going to be epic for this park, and with their legendary park president who took over in February of 2023, the park is definitely headed in the right direction over the next few years. Let's start off with 2026, where I think we'll see the park open some sort of flat ride package similar to Aeronautica Landing at Carowinds. This would be a great addition to the park and would give them some well-needed themed additions. I think we'll also see a few more of the 2025 style upgrades continue in 2026 as the park finishes being brought up to the Cedar Fair quality standards. 2027 is a bit of a complicated year. I can see this go a few different ways, but I'm leaning towards them getting a new kids area upgrade. I could see them get a major new coaster in 2027, but I feel like that may have to wait until 2028. Their newest coaster, Georgia Gold Rusher, is really a 2025 addition, even though it was supposed to open in 2024, and I think a 3-year gap between major coasters is just right for a park pursuing aggressive growth. That being said, I still believe the park will get a coaster in 2027, just not the major thrill coaster everyone wants. I think 2027 will be the year they replace the Kid Flash coaster that has already been permanently closed, and I think they'll replace it with a Snoopy's Racing Railway similar to what Carowinds and Canada's Wonderland got recently. I would also expect a couple of new kid rides and spruce ups to the area to come along with this in 2027, but all eyes will be on the big addition coming in 2028. Now, I'm gonna go a bit crazy with this one, but I think 2028 will be the year Cedar Fair gives Over Georgia another major B&M. The park already has a flying coaster, an inverted coaster, and a hyper coaster from B&M, so this new addition would likely be one of 3 options. It could be a massive B&M dive coaster, which would be the very classic Cedar Fair option, but I'm not so sure about this one, being that Carowinds' next coaster may also be a dive coaster, and Carowinds is just 4 hours away. If Carowinds doesn't get a dive coaster though, then I do think this is the most likely option for the park. I don't think it'll be one of the smaller dive coasters like Dorney Park got in 2024. I feel like it would be something a little grander. Something that'll give the park a massive draw and bring in the crowds like never before. I'm not sure they'd give Over Georgia a Giga dive, but I'd bet on it being at least 200 feet tall if it happens. If for some reason the dive coaster is not an option for this park, then a highly themed launched B&M wing coaster could also be a very good option. These coasters look awesome, and Cedar Fair just gave King's Dominion one, so it's definitely a model they're okay with. A launched wing coaster would be a great fit at Over Georgia and would give them another launch coaster, which is something they could definitely use. A part of me thinks this is a little crazy, but I don't know. Tell me what you think. Could Cedar Fair put in a massive 305-foot B&M Giga at this park for the 2028 season? They did it for Carowinds back when they began developing that park shortly after they purchased it. And Over Georgia may have more potential than Carowinds long term. I'm really not 100% sure on this park's next coaster for 2028, but I am pretty confident it'll be a massive B&M. If it is a Giga though, then this park's future is a whole lot brighter than anyone now realizes. Now, for 2029, I think the park will do some major water park upgrades. Redoing slides, upgrading the wave pool, more seating area, a new restaurant, all around just major upgrades to the water park. This could potentially come along with a massive water slide as well, and maybe even a new kids area for the water park. At this point, I think the park will already be doing pretty well. How well the park performs will determine its future. If Over Georgia is booming after years of new investment and upgrades and their massive new coaster, then they'd likely see another massive coaster investment shortly after. maybe even along with the hotel. If for some reason the park isn't performing as expected, then maybe the rapid investment begins to slow down and the park settles into a regular mid-tier park. This is all up in the air, but I wouldn't be shocked if in 2029 the chain announced a brand new hotel opening at this park for the 2031 season. Not saying it's the likely scenario, and I'm definitely not expecting it. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction Over Georgia heads in. That's why I think in 2030 the park won't get much of anything at all. I think they'll do some spruce ups, some theming upgrades, maybe some needed maintenance, and they'll probably open a massive new restaurant. All quiet as the park prepares for an epic year in 2031. Then, as no one expects it, in July of 2030, I think the park will announce a record-breaking Intamin multi-launch coaster to open at the park for the 2031 season. This would mark the end of the rapid expansion and the final nail in the grand plan to build up Six Flags Over Georgia into an elite top-tier park. I could see the park open a family launch coaster at some point, or maybe get their high thrill launch coaster from Vekoma if Cedar Fair is still on bad terms with Intamin. But when all's said and done, this park will be a totally different park. In just a few years from now, it will look nothing it looks like today, and I think the vision Cedar Fair has for this park, guided by the park's president, will lead Six Flags Over Georgia to become one of the best parks in the Six Flags chain, and eventually, maybe even one of the best parks in the country. That's why I am so excited for the future of the Six Flags chain and the future of Six Flags Over Georgia. But what I'm even more excited for is the future of Six Flags Great Adventure. If you think Over Georgia is about to experience a renaissance, then you never believe what's coming to Great Adventure as the chain tries to build the park into one of the best parks in the world. The Great Adventure Resort is just getting started. Make sure you stay tuned for more here at Looping Thrills. Jake here, thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to be back next time.